What does S&P 500 stand for?
I do not know. 500. I don't recall.
Is it Stanley Morgan and Coors?
I don't know. 500, I assume, is a volume number?
Yo, what's up, y'all? Welcome back to Black Excellence Daily. I am your host, Sean Croxton. Thank you so much for tuning in. We've got Mellody Hobson on the show today. She is the president and co-CEO of Ariel Investments. She is also the former chair at Starbucks. And today she's talking about financial literacy, a hugely important topic for our community. And if there's anything that I can do that can make me feel like, okay, I've done my job, is to encourage the Black community to become more financially literate. We want to invest more. We need to save more. We need to become more strategic in terms of what we do with our money. Because, of course, we want generational wealth, and we also want to retire comfortably. Right? We don't want to suffer during retirement. We don't want to spend our last years, pinching pennies and barely getting by. But here's typically what happens, not just with Black folks, but just people in general. We get to retirement age and we don't have enough money invested to support ourselves during retirement. And what happens is our children have to support us. And if your children are supporting you financially, that means that they cannot save nor invest enough money for them to retire well and comfortably. And if they can't retire well and comfortably, then your grandchildren are going to have to support your children. And then what happens is your grandchildren, because they're putting so much money into their parents, they can't save and invest enough money to retire. And it goes on and on and on and on until somebody says, okay, I am going to be the one who educates myself on how to become financially literate. I'm going to take responsibility and I'm going to put forth the effort to learn how to do this, to learn the terms, to learn how to invest, to watch the seminars and read the books and listen to the podcasts from so many people out there who are trying to help you, retire well and do really good things with your money. And so Mellody Hobson is one of those people. She's been doing it for 20, 30 years and she does it so well. And I can't wait for you to hear today's talk. Mellody Hobson is coming up.
We are, as a society, handing the keys to people's financial future, but we have not taught them how to drive. And we start to realize there is a huge, huge problem going on in this country when it comes to just knowing the basics about investing. So I decided to test the thesis. You know that I work on Good Morning America once a week and World News Tonight as well. I do all their stories on the stock market and investing. So I said, I'm going to stand on the street and ask people financial terms in downtown Chicago and see what happens. And I'm going to show you a very quick excerpt of the video to show you what I think is at hand for this society. If you could roll the first video, please.
You went to the street to see if you could find out exactly what people do and don't know. And what the first question you were asking was about the S&P 500. Do you know the answer at home? Here's what happened in the street.
What does S&P 500 stand for?
I do not know. 500. I don't recall.
Is it Stanley Morgan and Coors?
I don't know. 500, I assume, is a volume number?
And you said that somebody thought it was a car race, like the Indy 500.
That's right.
What did people think a bear market was?
What is a bear market?
It's when the market is good.
I know there's the bear and there's the other one, the lion or whatever.
A bear market, I think that's when you buy. No, that's the bull market, I think. I never understand those terms.
And in fact, a bear market.
Bad. The market is going down, usually 15% over a 6-month period. The opposite is a bull market. We want to figure out why they call them bull and bear. Some say bears hibernate. Others say it has to do with how they kill their prey. Bulls take their horns and pull up, stock market going up. Bears bear down on their prey, stock market going down.
Good way to remember. Bond. Do we really know what a bond is?
What is a bond?
A bond? That I do not know. I cannot give you an exact definition.
How do I define that?
A bond belongs to the government.
Bond is basically a, I don't know, kind of, sorry.
So, last thing, an IRA. Do people know what IRA stands for?
What does IRA stand for?
I'm not sure, but I have one. Investment? Retirement account?
All right. I know an RS. People I don't like.
Okay, I know it's funny, right? And in the actual show, I gave all the answers. But this is the reality that society is looking at. And it's not funny when it comes down to, again, picking those retirement options and actually picking the investments for your kids' education or whatever it might be, and no one ever having told you how it is this works and how you do it. So this is the thing that actually makes me crazy. In Chicago, public school system, you can take, as an elective in a high school, wood shop or auto, but you cannot take an investing class. Now, this is what I find so interesting. I always like to ask a very simple question of audiences. How many people in this room clean their own carburetor? Because that auto class that maybe you taught, that's one that maybe you took. Maybe you learned that. Second question, how many people in this room whittle furniture in your spare time? Right? My boyfriend took wood shop, he told me. He said he took metal shop as well. So just to give you a sense, this is not something that is so hard to believe. People actually, a person in my firm, they came to watch me give a speech, and he said, I took electronics for 3 quarters in a high school in Chicago. So again, this is not something that is sort of made up, but you can't take investing. So the idea that every single day we all turn on the television, hear the radio, we get what I call the Holy Trinity, the Dow, the S&P, and the NASDAQ, and no one ever told us what it was. Not to mention going much more beyond that for the essential things that we need to know as a society. So as a result of that, I have this mission. My mission that I wake up every single morning running is to make the stock market the subject of dinner table conversation in this country. Because I think if we do that, we'll actually shift this issue around financial literacy and ultimately have long-term financial security as a society. The reason I've made this my mission is because I think there's a crisis at hand. And I think we're going to look back on this period and we are going to find that Rome was burning and we were all standing around holding the cans of water. Because to the extent that we don't save or invest appropriately as a society, we will find ourselves, one, retiring to poverty potentially, or being a significant burden on society, which obviously has huge social implications. So we've been doing this work with Charles Schwab and Company right in the neighborhood here in the Bay Area for 10 years. And we've done something that no one has ever done before. The first year we did it by ourselves at Ariel. We did a survey on how do Black people invest versus white people. Is there anything telling or intuitive there that could let us have a window into what is going on and maybe understand the problem and fix it? And we've been doing this for a very long time, as I said. After the first year, Charles Schwab came to us. They saw a story that was the lead story in the New York Times business section on a Sunday with John and I. And they said, we think you're really onto something. And we want to be the leaders in unbiased investor education, but we think you sit from a very unique vantage point, and we want to partner with you on this data on an ongoing basis. So hence became the Ariel Schwab Black Investor Survey that has really become the defining work on what is going on with race in society when it comes to investing. There have been a lot of research on gender and investing. Never before we did this work had there been any work done on race and investing. Now, I know I called every business school, all these professors who had specific interests. We couldn't find one piece of data on this topic until we started to do the research. Now, part of the reason that we've been felt so strongly about this data is this cover story. Now, this came after we started the effort. but I don't know how many of you saw this New York Times from October 2005 magazine section. We regret to inform you that you no longer have a pension. Now, to you all, young people like us, we never expected to have a pension. We haven't worked for companies with pension. But, it wasn't too long ago that if you worked at General Motors or Ford Motor Company or whatever industrial company or even a regular consumer products company, you'd work for the company for 30 years, retire with a gold watch and a secure pension. That's the way it worked. And we all know family members and friends who count on their pension to sustain them. Well, these days, it's not that way. If you work at Amazon or Microsoft or even Charles Schwab, there's no pension fund there. There's only a defined contribution 401k plan. And that 401k plan is you in the driver's seat making the decision about your financial future. And that means that it doesn't wreak havoc on corporate earnings and they can choose or not choose to make a match. So it's just sort of completely changed the paradigm, complete and total shift in how retirements will be funded in this country. Now, people always say to me, you're bashing 401k plans. And I want to assure you, I am not in any way. I'm a believer in 401k plans, and I like the ownership that an individual needs to take about their future. But the one thing I will tell you, when they were enacted 25 years ago, 401k plans were not ever meant to be the full retirement solution for an individual. It was meant to be supplemental. It has turned into the full retirement solution. On top of that, 80 million working Americans in this country have no access to any kind of company-sponsored retirement plan, 401k plan, or pension fund. So there are a lot of people that are completely left out that have to take the initiative on their own in order to secure their retirement by going out and saving and investing. Now, if that isn't bad enough, people always say, well, we've got this wonderful safety net in America called Social Security. And I like to call Social Security a safety net with holes. So if you're under the age of 40, it's pretty dicey if we're ever going to see Social Security because the system is actually going to go bankrupt in short order. So that's one thing. There'll be more people taking out of the system than paying into it. And we have not quite figured out how we're going to fix that because of the number of baby boomers who will be relying on Social Security. But, that in of itself, maybe that will be fixed. But I always like to put into context what Social Security really means. So I went out and did research. What is the average Social Security check in this country today? The average Social Security check in America today is $1,000 a month. Now, if you know anyone who can live on $1,000 a month, tell me who that is. $1,000 a month with no other income, you are in a very, very bad situation. $12,000 a year if you had no other retirement money. Now, just to give you a little more color, no pun intended on this issue, I asked my mother, who is turning 80 years old, she would kill me if she heard me say that, how much her Social Security check was. Now, you have to remember, in my mother's life, I'm her retirement plan, okay? Because she said, I sent you to Princeton, with loans and everything, but she feels like she got me there and that it's just payback after that, right? That's how she sees the world. I don't know if you all have mothers like that, but my mother on graduation day told me what I owed her. So just so you know, and she was not kidding, and I'm still paying. So long story short, my mother, I said to her, how much is your Social Security check? Now, when she got past being appalled that I'd asked her the question, I said, Mom, you could really help my research on this. So I just need to know. I want a real person that I can talk about. So my mother's Social Security check, remember, she had 6 kids and she was an entrepreneur, which means half the time she was not paying into any Social Security system. My mother's Social Security check is $400 a month. My mother's medication is $900 a month. Okay, so now you get a sense of why I'm scared to death about this issue. Because I think there are a lot of people in society where this is their fate. And that is not a fate that is acceptable to me, doing what I do every day, feeling like I have a bully pulpit to affect change. So I mentioned the world has changed. If you just look back to 1980, 40% of corporations had a pension. And a pension is not a bad deal. You work for the company, you're guaranteed 80%, sometimes 70% of your salary until you die. Not a bad deal. Now in 2006, only 20% of American companies are offering pensions. And I have to tell you, every day another pension fund dies. So they get canceled, they turn into a different type of plan. So this is an ongoing issue. Now, on top of the fact that pensions are going away, the one thing we also know as a society, we are not saving enough. So we looked at people who are actually retired today, and we asked a specific question. How much do you have saved? Now, these are current retirees. 45% had less than $25,000 saved when they retired. That's half of retirees, less than 25%. So they're going to have that $1,000 a month Social Security that I'm telling you about. Now, I have to tell you, I'm not sure you guys get this. I think you do. We get Social Security statements now, so it tells us what we can plan for. Mine says that I'm going to get $2,100 a month when I'm 65, which I don't think is going to buy groceries, right? When you add inflation and everything else. So 45% of people here had less than $25,000. 21% had between $25,000 and $100,000. And a third, basically, had more than $100,000 saved for retirement. So this is the situation that we're looking at. Now, the thing about this situation that becomes even more challenging and something that we've worried a lot about is this situation changes when you look at it based upon race. So if this weren't bad enough when you look at all of society, we've been doing this research for a decade. So what is the median total savings, black versus whites? A decade ago, we asked the question, African Americans on average had $30,000 saved for retirement. These are African Americans and white Americans making $50,000 in household income or more. Nearly identical age, about 50 years old, nearly identical education level. So these are two people virtually the same, just different colors of their skin. Black Americans had $30,000, white Americans had $68,000 on average. We asked the same question last year. The black number was $48,000. A decade later, the white number was $100,000. Half the savings. So again, it's not even that the white individuals have enough money, but you cut that in half and you see that for minorities, this story gets worse. My mother always likes to say there's no bottom to worse. You know, things can get worse. This is one of those examples. There's no bottom to worse. Things get worse. So we looked at how much are we saving as a society. A decade ago, African Americans were saving $146. Today, $173. White Americans were saving $226 a decade ago, now $252. So we're just in terms of the ongoing amount of money that we're putting away, we're saving a lot less. Now, in addition to not saving as much as our white counterparts, the one thing that we also know from our research, we don't have the same exposure to equities. So as we all know, the stock market has outperformed all other investments since 1926. You need stocks in your portfolio for growth. If you're sitting out the stock market, it's going to be very, very hard to grow your money and secure your retirement. So we asked a very specific question for a decade. Do you own stocks or stock mutual funds? Remember, almost identical scenario for both groups of people. 1,600 people in this random survey. In 1998, 57% of African Americans said that they own stock or stock mutual funds versus 81% of our white counterparts. Gaping hole. Now, this is the thing that is so discouraging. You look at the pink chart climb. By 2002, we were at 74%. A lot of us jumped in, internet stocks, bubble. The stock market blew up. We completely sold out of our stocks, and white Americans just pared back. And look at how the white number is virtually flat over those years. So last year, we went back into the field and we asked, do you own stock or stock mutual funds? A decade later, and much to my chagrin, after probably thousands of speeches, I feel like Al Gore. That's the only way I feel like Al Gore, I should say. After literally, I've done so many speeches on this topic, I can't count. We were back at 57%. So I hadn't moved the needle at all. Our data hadn't moved the needle. Waking up at 3 a.m. hadn't moved the needle to do television. Nothing. 57% versus for our white counterparts, 76%. Now, I know there's been a tough stock market, but many of us, it was our first time being stock market investors and seeing this kind of volatility. And when it happened, we ran for the hills. Now, a lot of reason that I believe we ran for the hills is because, again, we have not been taught how to do this. This is sort of learning as you go. First place that African Americans learn about the stock market and investing is their company 401k plan. White Americans, interestingly, tend to learn before they get to their first job with some conversation with family or friends. So it comes a little bit earlier, and our first exposure comes later. And when we are first being exposed, we're making all of these important decisions.
That was Mellody Hobson. Her website is arialinvestments.com. You can watch today's talk on YouTube. It is called BBSA Conference Mellody Hobson. I got a fantastic lineup for you this week. I'm really excited about it. We got George Sabira on the show tomorrow. I can't wait to introduce you to George. We've got Dick Gregory on Wednesday, Dr. Miles Monroe on Thursday. Then we wrap things up with Lisa Nichols. Hey, enjoy your day. Thank you for tuning in. I'm out. Peace.